So I'm going to go over the creation of an assembly in Fusion 360, sort of all in the same space here. And for my students, a lot of you have been creating objects that have multiple pieces. However, I want to get into more specifically making them different components. Now, components are going to be parts of things. So just to demonstrate this, I'm going to make a block with some pieces in it. So if I've got this first block, now I'm not doing anything with sizing, I'm just kind of making a generic, like that's a block. So this block right now is what's called a body, and a body, you can't move it around. It's just a 3D mass in sort of this void of CAD space. So this, in order for it to become a part, I would need to right click on it and make it a component. I'm going to pause on that for right now though, just to show something in a minute. So I'm going to make another sketch on top here and put a hole for something else that I'll put in there in a minute because I want to modify this block. I want this block to have a hole in it. And then I also want this block, oops, well here I'll cut this one out. And then I also want this block to have, I can make a polygon tool shape. Let's just cut this out. Doop. Okay, so now it's got these two holes in it. This is one body, it's one mass, it's one thing. Even though these other features are in it, it's still one like object. But Fusion doesn't know it's a part yet. So to make it a part, I'll right click on it. I'll create a component from the body. And now it will go here. So I'll just call this block. So this exists on its own. Now, if I go in to make another shape, let's say I want to, in the middle of this, put a circle, and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so maybe it fits in just for this demo. Logistics and tolerance on that stuff we'll get into in a later unit. When I extrude this thing now, okay, cool, and just the button there. We're going to look at operations in the extrusion menu. I can make it a new body, or if I want it to be a whole separate thing, I can make it a new component. So if I was adding it to an existing component, I could do join, cut, or intersect if I was modifying an existing piece or part. But since I'm making a whole new part, I'm gonna just make it a new component from the get-go. So now when I say okay, I've got component 2, which I can call circle. So now this is a separate thing, and I can actually drag them separately. They're each their own thing. I'm hitting Control Z just to pop it back in there. But if I wanted to put a top on this, say I wanted to put like a top peg to this, so I want to have that join that. I'm going to actually select. So when you hover over a component, you can pick it with the dial next to it. So now that's what I'm working on right now. Everything else got grayed out. So when I extrude these shapes above it, I'm going to pick join. It's going to add it to my circle piece. And if I go back to the overall thing, I'll move the dial back to the top here. This is all the same piece. So that's one piece, and then that's one piece. Control Z, just to put those back. And then now I'm going to just make another shape here. I'm actually just going to steal it using the offset tool and bring it in a copy. I haven't talked about the offset tool yet, but the offset tool will create an identical shape, and you can say how far off of the original you want it to be. It's chain selection because these are technically different lines, 6 different lines. So I'll keep them together just to make my little hexagon there, and that's going to make this part real quick just to throw that under there. I want it to be a new component because I want to make a new part, like an entirely separate thing. Let's call this hex for hexagon. And just like the other one, I'm going to give it a top. So on the top here, I can use offset again to copy this shape to make kind of that big block head like I did before. Extrude. Now I want to make sure it does join with the hex part, so I'll select the hex part and make sure that's the piece I'm working on when I add this in. and join. There we go. So now I have 3 distinct pieces that I can move around separately. And what I'm going to add to this assignment, because I'm asking students to redo this, is I'm going to ask you to give them a different material each. And what that's going to look like for that, let me just talk about moving a piece. If you do click on a piece, you can click on the move copy, and that'll let you move it more specifically. Whoopsies. If I pick the whole part and then do move, then it should let me, there we go. It'll let you move it on a direct axis. So for changing the material, if I right click on the piece, we can just focus on appearance right now because you can search them easier. I can type in here. If I want this block to be made out of wood, I can type wood and it gives me some options. I'll make it out of cherry and drop that in. And then these, I'll make them out of some type of metal. So let's do anodized blue and anodized red. It's by default body / component, so it's going to apply to the whole thing that's within the same body or component. But because I don't want these getting lumped in the same body like some of my students have had happen previously, now they are separate. So now these are 3 bodies. When students submit this, I need you to screenshot this list over here in addition to your object, because then I know you did it correctly. If you go to render, you still have that in there. And if you want to get this as high quality as you can, and by high quality I mean like all the lighting effect, just for the sake of submitting this, so I'll put this close to there. I can do in canvas render, and it'll take a couple of minutes to kind of finish this, or no, only a few seconds really. But it gives you all the shadows and the lighting. Depending on how things are set up, it might look better or worse, but this will show you reflection in it. So I need to see for this assignment this. I'm also going to be asking students from assignments now on to give them different materials, and then go to render view and render in canvas. This is just going to make all of your objects pop more, because again, with all of these assignments, they need to be objects that are recognizable. So getting the lighting effect and the object effect in there, our object interactions with lighting, it's just going to make everything look that much better. So I will articulate this in the written description, but I'll just say it one more time. So I'm looking for, when you submit, 3 separate parts that create one thing or one scene that is a recognizable bunch of stuff. You're going to give each of them an appearance or physical material. It'll do the same thing for right now. And then go to your render tab and just hit render in canvas. I think you'll be very impressed with what you'll come up with. And let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.